So many people over the years have asked me for this exact formula or for this exact thing, and it has taken me a really long time to get here. And it's something that you probably could have used so many different times in your life. And I bet you your help would be a completely different setup, whether that be if you're in chronic pain, you have any chronic conditions, or just the way in which you live your life, your vitality might be completely different if you had known some of these things earlier. So earlier this year, I launched You Are the Medicine membership, and I launched this membership as a way to help educate you and bridge the gap between health and healing. Whereas when you go to the doctor, you are often going to the doctor because you feel uninformed about your body and your symptoms. You feel disempowered when it comes to choosing supplementation, herbs, any type of anything to help you with what you're going through. And so you go to a doctor, you go to your GP, you go to your primary care physician, and you say, hey, you've been to school, you know more than me for sure about this, right? The problem is the cycle that I have seen, and I see this over and over again, and something that a lot of people have reached out to me for is that they've done all those things and are still not feeling well. They're still having IBS. They're still having flare-ups. They're still having chronic pain. They're still having all these things, and they've gone to all the doctors. They've gone to all the ologists, and they're really left with a handful of medications that the doctors say, hey, take this for the rest of your life. And that's going to be your life now. Like, learn to deal with it. And I think that's a very unfair sentiment to say to somebody. I'm not saying that they aren't doing all that they can, all that they know how to do. I'm not. What I am saying is that from a Western medical perspective, they are taught to seek and to look for disease. And within that, it needs to fit into a billable box that they can bill your insurance for. When things start to not fall into those categories anymore, or they become complex because they're not taking into account that maybe something that you're experiencing is brought on by emotional stress, it's kind of like, well, I don't know. Here, let's just suppress the symptoms. And I actually teach this in You Are the Medicine membership. This is one of the required, well, I mean, I guess none of it's required, but one of the things that I'm like, hey, you should start here, because if you don't start here, you won't understand the premise of a lot of natural approaches to medicine. And it's really helping you build these educational foundations for your health and for not only the way that I look at health and I look at healing and I look at wellness, and not just as an industry, but as you as a person, somebody who can feel and be well, that there's a big gap between what you know about your body and what's available to you and what you've been taught. And even in the Western medical model, what they have actually been taught about people's bodies is looking at them as a segmented system. You're looking at the reproductive system or the respiratory system, or you're looking at, the digestive system. You're not looking at that somebody who's experiencing a lot of grief could also be experiencing a lot of respiratory issues. That's because the respiratory issues, and they probably have some like neck issues, tight traps, tight shoulders, maybe one side's a little more tight than the other. Yeah, because T3 is probably experiencing some tension. It's probably getting some signals from the nervous system, and it's holding a tension pattern around there. That all has to do with the lung. Grief has to do with the lungs, respiratory system, lungs, right? So they're not taught to look at things like that. And I think that's something that's really beautiful about all of these ancient medical traditions, is that they really do look at you as a whole person. In homeopathy, they call them constitutions. In Ayurveda, they call them doshas. Like, they're looking at the underlying type of person that you are. What would be prescribed for me as somebody who has a tendency to, in Ayurvedic, my body type is a lot more pitta, which is a lot more has to do with like the fire element underscoring it, whereas somebody who is more of a vata element in their body has a lot more air as opposed to fire of the pitta. And so typically they're going to have a little bit drier hair, drier skin, whereas somebody who has pitta typically has a little bit more like red undertones to their skin, a little bit oilier skin, a little bit more muscular build. It's really looking at, not that you're saying that every system is completely different and you're looking at it completely differently. But because of who you are and the way that you are composed as a human, you are already predisposed to interact with environments in specific ways. And so the proclivity to lean to certain symptom expression is partly because of your constitution, who you are. It then takes into account the environment that you've been in, your family dynamics, what's been passed down to you. I mean, especially people who have been raised with a very devout, religious upbringing. There's often a lot of shame, a lot of criticism associated with that, because that is how those systems are set up, is to make you feel bad for doing things. And so there's, a lot of those things that you might be working through that then contribute to a physical symptom. And so I think that's where a lot of Western medical system, the system in general, has not only, it's not that it's dropped the ball, it's just it hasn't made the connection. Honestly, it's behind. And I don't mean that in like a derogatory way. I think the Western medical system is advanced for many different things, life-saving surgeries, again, acute medicine, emergency medicine. It is phenomenal for those things. And honestly, a lot of TCM or traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, homeopathy, those things can't really touch those extreme circumstances. And so in that way, huge advancements. But as far as things that have to do with everyday life, they've really fallen short. And so I've talked about this in some other episodes, but I wanted to really highlight You Are the Medicine membership, because really it is bridging that gap between feeling lost at 2 a.m. when your child has a fever and you're panicked and you don't know what to do. And so automatically you run to the ER and they're like, there's nothing we can really do. We could give them an antibiotic, but it's not viral, like it's bacterial, but this will honestly just put your mind at ease. So here, take this antibiotic that honestly will mess up their gut. And we might have issues down the road, but we'll deal with that later. Okay, great. So it's really looking at what can I use and have all the time, and how can I educate myself enough to feel like I can really make choices for my own body, for my own health, for the health of my family, from a place where I feel competent, where I feel educated, where I have not just Googled this in a panic. Because although I think, again, the internet is wonderful, it doesn't take into account the specificity of you. So I want to share with you, I think, this really unique thing that I've created, because I haven't seen it. I have looked all over. I've seen something that's kind of similar, but it's not personal enough. It's not community. And that's where I think, again, another gap has happened, is in past cultures, if you want to call it that, or ways of living, we lived in tight-knit groups and communities. And what has happened is we've really glorified individuation. We've glorified even the nuclear family separating from, your extended family. And it used to be, when you were sick, your grandma or your mom or somebody in the family had some remedies that they would recommend for different things, because they had to learn how to get by in a lot of these, again, situations that it's just life things. Like it's fevers, it's rashes, it's tummy issues, it's skin issues, it's hormone things that are happening because of hormone imbalances. It's like learning to be able to piece some of these things together. And people in your lineage would know these things, because over time, all this information would be passed from person to person. Okay. Now, when in 2000, again, there's a podcast episode on this. It's probably about 15 episodes or so back, maybe 20 episodes, about the Flexner Report of 1910. And this is really important, because the Flexner Report and how John D. Rockefeller actually changed the way and the education was for when it came to healthcare, when it came to, again, who was allowed to be a doctor, and what schools, essentially the schools were, a lot of their funding was pulled unless they would take out courses on herbalism, homeopathy, a lot of these more nature-focused medicines. And that's because it didn't keep you in that cycle of sickness, essentially. It promoted using pharmaceuticals, which are often petroleum-based, using a synthetic replica of an active ingredient that's typically found in plants, because that can be trademarked. Plants, I mean, now if you have genetically modified something, things like that, a lot of those things can be trademarked as your own. But again, you've genetically modified nature. But nature itself in its original form, which is why heirloom seeds are so important, those things cannot be trademarked, which means you can't trademark any of the medicine that comes from the root, the stem, the flower. Okay, all of those things are part of the plant. So in order to make a business out of medicine, this was something that was shifted in 1910. And it's important to understand that, because as that shifted, it took the power away from your grandmas and your nonas and the aunties that came in and helped with all of these things and had all these remedies that they knew that had been passed down, usually verbally, from person to person. And it was something that was almost like this heirloom that was passed down from person to person, was this knowledge. It's kind of like getting a recipe book. Is now you have information on how to help your family and be able to navigate, again, tummy issues, cuts, bruises, and have remedies that you know work, and have them on hand or be able to go and get them. So what happens is when you say that only these people who have gone to this school know the most, and I think this is, again, one of the blessings of technology, is that the information that was hoarded and only could be found out, so to speak, or only be learned in universities is now pretty much public knowledge. You can, for the most part, with the exception of in-person, whether that be clinicals or you know, whatever your degree is in, but any type of training in that way where it's hands-on. Other than that, if you want to learn something, about anything, you have access to it because of the internet, because of technology. So it's no longer information that is being just hoarded within these universities, which is great. However, what's happened then is people are like, oh, I didn't realize how stripped I was of information about my own body, and how much I was going to somebody and just trusting that they knew everything. And now, again, medicine is a practice. Now they've tried, 5 medications on me. None of them are working. Some of these give me severe side effects. And so I was like, there's a missing link, because I see so many people who are holistically minded, who lean into more natural remedies and a more natural way of living. They're starting to replace all of trying to get out microplastics. They're trying to, they're concerned about antibiotics being used in their food and in their meat. They're concerned about vaccinations. They're concerned about organics. They're concerned about the polyester and the microplastics that are seeping into our bodies from the polyester clothes that we're wearing. They're concerned about our air quality and climate manipulation. So all of these things, right? People are starting to become a lot more aware of that. But there's a gap between wanting that and trying to move in that direction and the information and education on what to do about it. And so about 3 years ago, I was like, there needs to be an app or some place that people can land to learn about different natural remedies, whether that be herbs, whether that be homeopathy, whether that be auricular therapy, which is, some people call it ear seeding, but it's acupressure points on the ear that correlate with different parts of the body, that people can learn about different things that they can do for their symptoms that include kind of the chemical understanding. Although, again, if you don't have a chemistry background or a biochemistry background, some of it is kind of like, you're like, okay. So I tried to really break a lot of these down as simple as possible, while still communicating why things are working within your body, like the biochemical reaction that's happening in your body, but also like understanding some of the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects to some of these symptoms that are showing up in your body, and how to address them with other routes to healing. So I was like, there needs to, so that's kind of where the idea started. I was like, there needs to be something out there. It's for the people who are wanting a healthier lifestyle with our environment, and a lot of businesses that honestly don't really care about our health. They care about their sales. And I understand that there's a lot of things that you're like, well, I didn't know. I mean, I'm equally as guilty. So when I say this, please understand that this is a process for every single person, because most people don't realize how much it's just become normalized in our everyday lives, whether it's the clothes that we're wearing, again, the medications that we're taking, the cosmetics or the lotions and potions that we're putting on our bodies, the food that we're eating, but also the environment that we're in, the friendships, the belief systems, all of these things. So it's starting to peel away some of these layers and help simplify it for you to be able to bridge that gap and feel a lot more informed about decisions that you are making for your health, and also feel like you have things in your back pocket or in your medicine cabinet, so to speak, that you can pull out and use for these things. And you feel like you have a home or a community to land in, to also ask questions and connect with other people that feel this way. Because I don't know about you, but for myself, growing up, I always kind of make the joke that my mom was a kitchen nurse, and I'm very thankful for that example, because what it has taught me is to trust myself. What it has taught me is to trust my body. And I think that's the first thing that people have to relearn when you're going back to a more natural way of living, is that you've been conditioned and taught that you need other people that know more about you than you do. And that has to almost be dismantled first. So sometimes it's like it only takes one health thing going wrong or being resolved by a natural remedy for you to be able to start to see how you can trust yourself, because you've had an experience where you maybe felt scared or you felt unsure. And you're like, I've never done this before. I've never tried this homeopathic remedy. I've never tried this herb. But I've learned about it, and I know a little bit about my constitution, and I know a little bit about kind of who I am and my tendencies of my body and where these things like to pop up for me. You know, it's always kind of a digestive issue, or it always kind of lands in my lungs, or I get strep a lot, whatever those things are. And you're like, okay, I'm going to try this other thing, and I'm going to see how it goes. When you do that and you have one experience that goes well, all of a sudden you're starting to build with blocks of trust in your body, because your body has taken something that it recognizes as nature and utilized that information in a way to help encourage the body's healing response, instead of using something that somebody else recommended for you, that you gave up and handed over your agency to them about your health. Then they prescribed something, you took something that suppressed symptoms for a little while. And you're like, okay, great. They know more about my body than I do. All it takes, again, is those two different scenarios. Taking something that you've learned about, that you've used your intuition and trusted your own body. You've listened to your symptoms. You've put together kind of an understanding of your constitution and who you are. And then had a good experience where it worked well for you. And on the opposite, if you have a good experience with somebody who has taken the agency that you've given them and created a positive experience, it develops your trust in somebody else about your health. So usually the first little bit, and I always joke, like, that curiosity has to be there first before you really start to lean into going back to a more natural way of living. And it's not to say that you move to the woods, never use the internet again, and pick berries for all your meals. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you become a lot more conscious and intentional about what you buy, what you eat, what you consume or absorb into your body, so that you can prevent some of these things that typically take a long time to show up, because they build over time. They're slow to build. Things that most people, I can't remember the exact percentage, or the exact numbers, but it's something like, I wish I knew these statistics off the top of my head, but it's something like people who develop cancer, it's typically years in the making. It's not last month when you ate shitty for 2 weeks straight. It's not 3 months ago when you decided to go on a drinking binge because your boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with you and you were just like out partying and raging. It's not those. It's years, chronic things, cancer, all of that is years, long-standing shifts in your biology as a response to your environment, to your beliefs, to, again, what you're consuming. It's trying to keep up as best as it can. So as you're trying to move to a more nature-focused or natural-focused way of living, some of that includes educating yourself. And this is where You Are the Medicine membership comes in. So I wanted, one, to make it affordable. I wanted to make it something that was easy. Now, as this idea has built along the way, I've realized and I know that there is so much more to health than just being able to know which herb to reach for. It's actually about creating rituals and a lifestyle that promotes vitality and health, not degrades it, so that this has really evolved over time. But I launched this particular program back, I believe, in January or February of this year, so 2026. And I launched it, and within a couple of days, I kind of had this feeling that I was like, I think this needs to be different. It was set up more as like an online education course. And I was like, people aren't going to use this. And I don't mean there wasn't really great stuff in there, because it's all the same things. But the reality is at 2 a.m. when your child has a fever and you're panicked, or when you wake up, this happened to me the other week, and I shared this pretty openly on Instagram. You wake up and I got a crick in my neck that wasn't that I couldn't turn my head from side to side, which is normally what happens when you sleep funky. And now you can't look over your shoulder when you're driving, right, to check if a car's there. Mine was actually a crick in my neck that wouldn't allow me to tuck my chin or lift my chin. So it was really only comfortable in a sitting up, neutral position. And that means even like relaxing in my bed and like relaxing back and curling my spine a little bit more, like a little bit of a C curve to it. It's actually quite uncomfortable because it put tension on my neck. And I was like, shit. And I was like, it's okay. I didn't panic. I didn't grab for muscle relaxers. And would those have relaxed my muscle? Yeah, probably. But the problem I knew, because I know my body, I think I've talked about this other places. So if you don't know this about me, but I have a double curve in my spine. So I have scoliosis times 2. And what's happened is, because your body is incredibly wise, my body has developed an almost exact degree of mirror images of each other. So I'm like 29.2 or something like that curve on one side and like 29.6 on the other side. So I should be about an inch taller. But that being said, I recognize I have one shoulder, because of this curvature that's happening in between my shoulder blades, that this one shoulder has a tendency to give me more problems because of where this curve starts and the shift and things like that. So I'm like, okay, I know that it's happened because I slept on my shoulder wrong. It's fine. But instead of reaching for a painkiller, I knew I had Arnica in my cabinet, which is really great for pain relief. And I was again, you don't realize how much your neck braces and moves in that direction, like forward and back, nearly as much as you do, until I literally went to put on moisturizer, and the pressure of resisting the pressure of just my fingertips rubbing it in actually hurt. So I was like, ooh, okay. So took some Arnica internally the first few days. Within 2 days, I had a ton of movement back in my neck. Was it completely gone? No, but quicker than I've ever had anything else. And this is kind of the first time that I've done this experiment. I'm like, okay, we need to address, again, like I knew where it was. I knew kind of the emotionality that often comes with this, some stressors that were coming up in my life. So there was a lot of other things. And I was like, this is trying to show me something, but it felt very physical, not necessarily super emotional or things like that. So I was like, okay, what else can I do? Took Arnica. I also had a salve that had copaiba in it. Copaiba actually works on the endocannabinoid system. This is the same system that cannabis uses to help you feel relaxed or help your muscles feel relaxed. So I started using that, not just feel relaxed, but it actually helps them to relax. So I started using that on it topically. And then I also use my Theragun to help manipulate and release the tension in that area. So between those 3 things are things that I knew I could use. And I was like, I wonder how much quicker. Usually it takes about a week to kind of feel back to normal for that kind of stuff. This one was the worst that I had ever had in my life. And I've never had it in that way where it's forwards and back, which was very, very strange. I've actually never met anybody that's also had that. And so it was a little bit of a different approach to things. But within 3 days, I had I was at about 90% at around 3 days. That 90% kind of lingered, and I actually did something that like messed it up on accident. I thought I was like completely healed. I was like, great, that's like day 4 or 5, and I was like, perfect. And then I was like, shit, could have probably used a few more days of just not overdoing it, but that's all right. But that was the thing, is I was like, okay, I knew what I could do to help myself. And so many people panic, and so they reach for prescriptions or they call their doctor, not because those are their first choices. They've been told that's their only choice, and it's not. And even we just went on vacation for an entire week. There were 2 remedies that I never travel without. And sure enough, I used both. And some people in my family also used one or both, I think, the whole time. So it's feeling like you know things to reach for, and you feel empowered in some of these choices and have confidence in what you're doing. So I knew it had to be something that needed to be a little bit more accessible, like an app. It couldn't be that education, because if I had a prick in my neck, I was not going on my educational course, getting on my desktop, reviewing the videos, I wasn't going to do that. You know what you're going to do is you're going to pull up your phone and you're going to Google things. So I was like, this needs to be almost as easy as Google. I need to make it as accessible as possible. So once I had launched it into an educational program, within 3 or 4 days, I actually pulled the program, refunded people who had joined, and I was like, hey, this is not what I want it to be, and I don't think you will use it, and I can't, in good conscience, just leave this here for you to use, knowing that it won't be used, I think, in a way that just doesn't feel morally good to me. When I launch again, I'll let you know. So I was like, okay, that also then didn't feel like a bit of a hit necessarily to my ego, but it was understanding how much work, and you'll understand when I talk about the breakdown of it, how much work this would be, because I want you to feel like it's easy to use and it's something that you utilize once or twice a week. I want this to be an app and a place that you can live in, not all the time, and you're not sitting there like educating yourself all the time, but it needed to be searchable. So I was like, okay, currently I have built out over 25 different systems, body systems, or that's how they're organized. So everything from autoimmune to digestive to hair, skin, and nails to postpartum to aging and menopause. So lots of different variations of systems that you can go through. So essentially, if you're having a skin rash, I would go under skin. All you have to do is look up, they're all alphabetically organized. You go under skin, and then you'll find all these subsections. So this might be psoriasis, eczema, different skin conditions that you might be experiencing. Once you click on it, the video itself gives you different herbal options. I'm going to kind of talk you through all of those. Different blended homeopathy, which I really love, Desbio. Honestly, I love them because they address mind, body, spirit. There is emotionality behind, they have emotional remedies. They honestly have, I love the company, and I love a lot of how they developed and things like this. So, and I think it's really useful. Blends have a tendency to work really well that I've seen. So, and then single use homeopathy as well. So some of these are a little bit more specific, and I go over some of the specificities. I'm like, if you are because somebody who experiences psoriasis can have more of the dry, flaky kind or more of the plaque style. If I just blanketed this is for everyone who experiences psoriasis, it wouldn't work the same for both people, because both the people are experiencing different expressions for different reasons. Whether that be that their constitution is different, or whether that be what triggered it is different, doesn't matter. So in these, again, I go over some of the specificity of those things so that you can feel like you are choosing something that is the best fit for your specific symptoms and your specific body and any accompanying symptoms that you might be experiencing. We talk about it in there. I give you links to where to find some of these things. If you join, you actually get a percentage off of any DesBio products. It's designed to also be a community. And this was really important to me too. It took me a long time. I was going to create a specific app for this, but one basically already existed that made it really easy for me to be able to plug and play all of this and had all of the features that I was looking for. So it's hosted on School, which School I think is really brilliant in I love a lot of their mission is creating community. So there's so many different communities on there around, learning to play guitar. There's ones for learning to crochet. There's ones for learning AI. There's ones for learning all sorts of different things, but community is at the focus. And I wanted a place because when I was growing up and my mom, again, was this, what I would call a kitchen nurse, we didn't take antibiotics. In my entire life, I think have been on, some of that has to do with surgery, like a antibiotic drip, I think twice in my whole life as an adult I think twice. And I hardly ever get sick. I'll go years without being sick. I don't have any food allergies. I don't have a lot of these things I don't have any reoccurring infections or chronic conditions or anything like that, other than obviously the scoliosis. But I'm really thinking of getting those anti-gravity boots, hanging upside down. Just need to get more length, right? Less tension in there, more length. Just stretch me out. But I'm like a huge part of being the age that I am and being as healthy as I am is because of the choices around my health and the way that I take care of myself and my family. So I was like, as somebody who, again, didn't grow up, not only not really being vaccinated, but not taking antibiotics, taking supplementation, being encouraged to get outside and play outside and be outside, and that the sun was not bad. There's a lot of things that I kind of learned in my upbringing and have invested time and money and education into learning for myself, even as an adult, that I realized that so many people were not given that at a young age. And so they're learning it as they get older, how to rely on themselves and how to trust their bodies and trust their intuition and know that their body can heal. And with that comes being in community sometimes that doesn't feel the same as you do, that doesn't see the world or see the possibilities for your body or for your health in the same way, that doesn't view polyester as anything to worry about, that doesn't view things being sprayed in the air as something to worry about, that doesn't worry about EMF exposure, that doesn't worry about long-term side effects of antibiotics or over antibiotic use, that doesn't worry about pesticides being sprayed on food. And again, in isolation, I don't think a lot of these things are not the sole reason that you're experiencing chronic conditions, but together, blended, putting them all into the pot and stirring them around, I definitely think these are huge factors in a lot of the reasons why we have more sick people than ever before, despite being ahead as far as scientific advancements. We're not understanding that we don't need more advancements. I don't need more fake things imitating nature. I need nature. I don't need synthetic things imitating what nature can do. I need to get back to nature. You need to get back to nature and reconnecting with the way that our bodies are able to heal. And so I think I noticed, especially I was a young mom, and that also meant when I would have conversations with other people or other parents, a lot of the ways that I parented and choices I made for my family were different than a lot of the mainstream at the time. I had my kids young, so a lot of my friends didn't have kids, which meant a lot of my kids' friends Their parents were they were older than I was, anywhere between 5, 10, 15 years older. And sometimes that's a whole generation shift, which things change and evolve over time, and the perspective and again the education and the information that's available to each generation changes the way that they view things like health and education. So I knew the community needed to be a focus. It needed to be a focus for you who was joining the membership, that you felt you had a place to ask questions where there's no bad questions, no weird questions. You're not weird for doing any of these quote unquote alternative health practices. That red light therapy is very normal and near infrared has incredible benefits, but understanding that you can get near infrared by being outside in morning, sunrise and sunset time. And so exposure like that on your skin and the health benefits of that almost acts as more like a vitamin rather than, again, just like melanin production. That there's your eyes taking in that spectrum of light actually creates a lot of different chemical and biological changes in the body, and how important that is. And being able to have a place where you can have those conversations, it was so important. So every week we do a spill the tea, or, a little tea time, spill the tea, like tea gossip / tea, we like an herbal remedy. So we do that every single week. You can ask topics that we want to talk about. It's really just a place to connect. We can talk about topics, but it's not necessarily some place where I'm just coming on educating. I want you to be there. I want there to be conversation. I want you to ask questions that I can either answer or talk about. So this was really important because long term, this is designed to be a community of like-minded people who are looking to be better, who are looking to feel more well, and looking to feel like they have this vitality and this zest and this zeal for life. And I'm really excited. So essentially I wanted to make it as accessible for anybody. So I did the 3 most important sections as low as $7. So for $7 a month, you have access to cold and flu options. Again, this is things all the way from like a dry cough to a more wet cough to running noses, headaches, fevers, all of those things, to immunity, helping to boost and encourage a stronger immune system all the time, things that you can utilize for that. And then also for digestion. Digestion issues are one of the biggest issues. So you actually get in tier 1, you get access to all 3 of those within that for less than what you pay for a coffee a month. And this was really important for me to be able to make those things that people deal with most super affordable for you to hop in, for you to learn, for you to educate, for you to be able to turn to if you're like, oh, I can't remember, like my kid is coming down with, they just got a call from the nurse. What do I have at home? I walk you through all of those things. And the second tier, again, also super affordable. Right now, because we just launched, you can actually get into for founder's price, which is $27 a month. When you sign up at this price, it never goes up for you. Okay, this is not one of those things where you just get it for the time and then once the price increases, like it increases for you as well. No, if you sign up now at the founder's price of $27, it will be $27 for you, no matter how many videos are in there, no matter how much the price increases monthly for this tier 2, which is incredible. Because this you actually get access to everything that's in tier 1, right? Those 3, as well as all of those 25 plus body systems, over 50 plus conditions. You get that weekly tea time chat, the Q&A. You also get 10% off your DesBio supplements. So this one is actually a great one. You want to lock it in now, because once the price goes up, there's nothing I can do for you. Founders, this is where when people get in at like ground level for things, that's what this is. And they're like, this paid dividends. That's what this is, this tier 2 at $27, because it inevitably will at least be $57 or $67 a month. That's how much value will be in this, is that not only is it education, but it's the ability to have people to turn to and to be able to communicate and talk about these things openly without any type of censorship, things like that. Tier 3 is, I think, honestly worth the best money, because I already have a ton of one-on-one clients that pay more for this for single sessions every single month than you would pay for this. So tier 3 is $97 a month. This gets you everything in tier 1 and tier 2, right? The weekly chats. You're getting all of the content, but you're also getting monthly group healing activities. So this will be virtual spinal energetics. This will be breathwork sessions. This will be different ways in which to approach connection, healing, and being able to create a more resilient nervous system and body for yourself, so that the environment internally is more prepared to be more robust and encounter what kind of happens in the world in a way in which it doesn't take you down every time you travel, or every time you go to someplace that new or crowded or things like that, or every time you're stressed, you get sick. Like, we want to build up your system. Doing things like this in community is a really great way for you to do that. So again, you're also getting things. So there are separate educational trainings and courses in there that you can actually buy separately as well. So outside of these, if you want to add in some of these different offerings, you can do that. But in the tier 3, it already includes breath work. So different breathwork videos for you to walk yourself through. Breathwork is phenomenal, at least 3 times a week. I recommend it for everybody. An entire training on nervous system rituals to help create a more resilient system. We are not trying to balance your nervous system. Your nervous system will never be balanced. You want for it to be able to be resilient, encounter something that triggers it, and be able to respond differently. So that included, meditations are included, energetic rituals are included, because again, we are looking mind, body, and spirit, and also a resource guide. So all of this is, one, for educational purposes only. It's not medical advice, just so you know. But this is to understand, be able to give you access to more tools and more education so that you can make better decisions for yourself and become more sovereign. Feel like you actually have agency when it comes to your health, rather than being like, well, I don't know. And that's the thing is, although labs can tell you a lot, I know a lot of people who've had some success with functional medicine doctors, but they've also run into issues and speed bumps and things like this. So it's understanding that this is that gap between how you take care of yourself all the time, how you can handle these little things so you can complete the healing cycle. When a symptom starts, it's allowed to finish the complete process rather than stunting the symptom expression process, which is what pharmaceuticals have a tendency to do. Is you have a symptom and their job is to suppress the symptom. Whereas natural medicine says, I don't want to suppress it. I want you to finish it. I want you to, the reason why that symptom came up in the first place, let's finish that expression so that your body is more resilient. Because the more that you stop the symptom expression, the more it gets repressed into the body. We want the full expression to happen so the body can completely process it, move it through the body. And again, this might be something that's emotional. This might be something that's more mental. And having that tier 3 gives you access to some more of these other options. There's so many ways for you to be able to not only manage symptoms, but also give the body the right conditions to create biological change. And I've seen a lot of people have tremendous success with using natural medicine because it's the original medicine. This is not alternative. And that's again, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people are like, oh, alternative. And I was like, you mean original? Because it for sure was around before pharmaceuticals by centuries, actually. And so I even address some of the patterns that happen that are presenting through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine. We talk about the elements. We talk about all these things because if you don't, you're saying that you are not a part of nature, which is not true. You are saying that you did not evolve and your body didn't intelligently evolve with nature, and it did. So there's always this way in which nature recognizes nature. It's why, even though essential oils, and this is something that was fascinating when I went through a course for essential oils when I was getting my PhD in natural medicine, is something that I found really fascinating that they spoke about in clinical aromatherapy use, is that because of the way that the essential oil is made and all of the different components to an essential oil could have like 99.8 0.1% of whatever that active ingredient is. Okay. But that 0.02% could be made up of 30,000 or something like that. I think it was 30,000. Maybe it was more like 3,000. Anyways, different atoms, molecules that change the way that the body responds to it, which is why when you extract only that active ingredient that, yes, is the most of it, and you try to utilize that in a synthetic form, although the active ingredient will have those effects on the body, whether that be, again, like suppressing pain or, drying up a runny nose, there's a side effect to it because that 0.02 and all of those different components in it allow the body to recognize it as a form of nature. And so it's utilized differently than when you have just the active ingredient isolated, which is why there is little, almost non-existent reports of people having not allergic reactions, but responses that would warrant an emergency room visit, as opposed to pharmaceuticals, which is in the top 5 for killing people. So it's interesting that the further that we get from nature is the further away we get from the answer. And so the answer is to come back to yourself. It's to come back to trusting yourself. It's to come back to your body. But you need a guide. You need someone to give you education and empowerment through that experience until you feel like you are confident and you trust yourself in those things. When we lived in, again, these communities where this was shared information, it wasn't hoarded, everyone felt empowered. And so in a way, trying to keep this affordable allows me to share the information, the wisdom, the education that I've gleaned over not just my formal training, but also lived experience. These are things that I have lived. Again, like going on vacation, and I'm like, these are the things that I'm taking because I want to make sure that we're not miserable for 5 days. I want to make sure that if something happens, that I have something that is supportive, not just suppressive. Because sometimes if you suppress it for one day, it comes right back. But if you allow the body and you give the body the encouragement and the right environment, and you change the information and the signaling that's coming into the body with, again, signals from nature, okay, you then start to change the way that your body responds, which is the whole purpose of this, is to bridge that gap. So I'm super excited. It just launched a few days ago. And I shared it with my email community and teased a little bit out on social media, but it is officially out for the public. And I cannot wait for you guys to get in there. It's a living library, which means I'm adding to it every single week. There are more videos and things being uploaded. So you can kind of, especially at this founder's price, is a great time to get in. You can see all the bodies. Not all of them have videos in them yet, but I do have a long list of videos to get through. And so I'm adding to it every single week. And that way it's constantly evolving. It's constantly giving you more education, more information to be able to take care of yourself better, to be able to not just quote unquote manage your symptoms, but to actually give your body a chance to heal itself and to encourage that from your body, because it does know how to do that. That is a healing response. The body knows how to do that. It's healing itself every day, all day long. But if the information that you're giving it doesn't allow for optimal change, it's doing the best that it can with what it has. So what we're trying to also do is, again, bolster up the system, encourage a different response so that your body becomes a lot more resilient, has a lot more vitality and a lot more zest for life. So again, if you haven't, I'm going to put the link below for school, but if you haven't checked this out, it is phenomenal. It is, I'm so excited for this. I'm excited for the way that it's built, the way that it's built out, for the community aspect. There'll be meetups and things like that in the future. I already have some ideas for some to, in different cities so we can connect and collaborate, because I think that's also a huge part of it. I want people to feel connected to a community that feels empowered to be able to use natural medicine And if that is you, please go ahead and check it out below and find a tier that works for you. Getting in at the founder's price at $27 for that tier 2 is chef's kiss, and is going to be the most valuable that I think for so many people. And it's a great way to get started today. But if you have any questions, or if you have symptoms or conditions, diseases, or disorders that you would like added to the list, please let me know. You can go ahead and find me on Instagram at Dr. Chalene Carter, or even on TikTok, also Dr. Chalene Carter, Dr. Chalene Carter. I'm going to put the link below for you to go check it out, so it makes it easy and accessible for you to have it on an app right there for you to use anytime, any day, any symptom. Until next time, my friends, cheers.